Welcome to A Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean spoiler chat with a very special guest this week, Austin Burke. Welcome back to the pod, buddy.
Yeah, we can say we're friends now because we met in real life and explored Philadelphia together, man. That was so much fun, Joe. So thank you for having me on here today.
That was a lot of fun. Very happy to meet you in person, and very happy to hear your story too in person with how you got started. And thank you for bringing that little lesser known person, Sean Chandler, along with you.
He just came. He actually snuck in when I was driving. So I'm like, let's just bring him along.
He's like, I guess I'll do this too.
Yeah.
Mr. Math Teacher Movies himself, Sean, what's going on?
How you doing? I'm feeling great.
Any big news?
Usual stuff. Oh well, yes. I bought a house yesterday.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
that's why I think my head is in like 8 different directions, which is a great time to get into a very, very simple series like Moon Knight. It's going to go very. I'll definitely be in the headspace for this right now.
Absolutely, it's going to be perfect, and that's what we are here to discuss today. Is Marvel's Moon Knight, 6 episodes of the Oscar Isaac-led series that just wrapped up last week. Sean, will you have a theater room in the basement?
Ooh.
Well, there's a disagreement going on there. I believe I should have a full home theater in the basement, and I don't know. Sam wants her office there or something, so she could make money for our food. But honestly, I don't think that's a huge deal. I think we're fine. I'm gonna definitely be making good, but that involves me doing stuff, and that's something I'm not big on. Doing so. if I have to take the lead on the project, it's gonna go south quickly.
It takes away from Criterion Network time, or Criterion Channel, I should say.
I like Criterion Network better.
Criterion, a comic book network, or whatever it was. Cartoon Network is what I was thinking. There we are. All right, so we are here to talk about Moon Knight, and this was a divisive series in a lot of ways, I think, because it really was one of the first series that gave us a big introduction into a character that we hadn't seen prior. And really delved into an Egyptian mythology that we hadn't seen in the MCU before. And it's always fascinating when they try to straddle the craziness of the Marvel Cinematic Universe with something that's based in reality, meaning, actual Egyptian mythology. So let's dive into that first and just talk about our basic reviews and thoughts on the series as a whole. And Austin, I'm going to start down there with you. What did you think of Moon Knight and its 6-episode run?
I enjoyed it. There were so many things that I expected this show to do that it both tackled and didn't touch, but maybe we'll see some of that in the future. It was funny because I did a deep dive podcast on a different channel called PopXcast, where we dove into the comic origins and the lore of Moon Knight. And this was, I think, a week before I got to see the first 4 episodes and then waited an entire month to see the next 2, which was terrible. But especially with that cliffhanger ending. But to know what I knew going into the show, I'm saying to myself, how are they going to do this? There is so much. Maybe, and I know it may sound far-fetched, may be the most complex character we have seen yet in this universe, up there in comic lore with some of these just outlandish, almost sea-level characters in terms of popularity. But when you actually dive into them like a Moon Knight, man, there's so much. And there's so much that they tapped into with this show that I thought was the coolest thing. Then you have Oscar Isaac, who's playing someone with numerous personalities. You got to give multiple performances. You got to make fans happy. And the fact that he was able to do it, but not only do it, but do it on a level that was, I think he's in the top 5 best performances in the MCU so far. That's crazy. But he's so good, man. He's so good to carry the weight of this on his shoulders. But to fit it in 6 episodes was probably my biggest concern going in and probably my biggest issue going out, right? It felt a little rushed. It felt like they were trying to compact a lot into a little, even though you have 6 hours. That's 2 movies right there. But his backstory is so comprehensive, and it's the first time seeing the character. So it's not like Martha and Thomas Wayne. We can just skip over that this time. We can't do that. We have to give
what happened with them?
Yeah, what's going on?
They not have died 7 times on the big screen before. So it's just like, it's one of those things, man. But they they rushed through some story points. I think the finale was rushed. That's the word that I used for it. There were a lot of things they tried to do. But overall, overarching thoughts, I enjoy the series. I like the complex character study. I love the lore, and I love the introduction to new characters going forward in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean, we talked a little bit about that early on when Moon Knight first started, that there is such a complexity to this character and the story. And, they're tackling mental health, they're tackling the lore, as Austin just referenced. There's so much going on. And I know we talked a little bit about this when we were getting towards the end, that it felt like we just needed more time. Where did you end up with Moon Knight as a whole?
I liked it. I guess I can kind of understand some people having the hatred for it. I don't know. I couldn't have strong feelings. I mean, it's got the last episode flaws of gigantic CGI battle, and also that's when all the things that are cool happen and then they're done. Like, I mean, the introduction of Lockley is like immediately there. And you know what? I've been listening to like a million podcasts and reading a bunch of articles about this.
Yeah.
And so like pretty much when I saw the Lockley thing, I was like, oh, okay, I know who that is. But if I was a casual viewer, I would have been like kind of beyond pissed. Especially that that's like a post-credit scene. And it's like an extremely key moment, to the point where I truly thought this was a limited series. And if it is, that's bad. That's just like a bad ending to have. I mean, I know that we're going to discuss the future of it a little bit later, but I think like what was pretty brilliant on its part was starting from the perspective of one of the characters created. And I think that was truly because it humanized a character that, essentially, like you could argue, wasn't real, but therefore we're arguing now that he is real and that personality is real. And I really enjoyed kind of going from that, because it's also like a very mysterious start. It's like, this is the dude that absolutely knows nothing and he's slowly discovering anything. Steven is almost like an audience perspective, if you will. And I sort of enjoyed that way of talking about it. But for the most part, this was an incredibly large risk, and it doesn't pay. I mean, there's a few things that are a little bit annoying. Like I said, like that last episode, it had some Falcon and Winter Soldier things where like, are you the first Egyptian superhero? And all of a sudden, yes, I'm like, you could just say an Arabic superhero and the message comes off the same. I mean, that's still like a huge deal. And like you don't need to really drive that line home with that sort of thing. It's like, you could just, I don't know, there's a few things that bugged me, but
on the nose.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's funny. Austin referenced the first 4 episodes, and that's where I sat for a while, right? Because we got those first 4 episodes very early. I saw them and I didn't know how I felt. Even going into the 4th episode, I was kind of like lukewarm about the series. I was very interested in the character and still remain interested in the character to this day. But until that 4th episode twist at the end, I wasn't feeling the series that much. Then it got to that 5th episode, and we'll talk about favorite episodes. But that 5th episode was tip top Marvel, in my opinion, because it was a multiple character study in so many ways, and it was expertly acted, and it was just fascinating to me. I have friends that hated it, but for me and my likes, I absolutely loved it, which led into a finale that felt a little rushed for sure, but felt like a mid-season finale to me. When you're watching a show, I don't know if any of us do this anymore, but watching a show on cable or something, and they always do that like October, November break until they come back in January or February. That's what it felt like, because we got the Jake Lockley thing. We, got the introduction of the Scarlet Scarab. We got so many things there, and it felt like, okay, now we're finally getting it. Oh, we're done. And we're probably getting a season 2. I think there was someone referenced it. One of the companies overseas referenced a season 2 or something. So it's probably just waiting on the announcement. But I felt like I wanted a little bit more. But if you look at the acting and you look at Oscar Isaac in particular, this series gave us much more than anything else. Any other series, I think, really gave us in terms of acting. I think Elizabeth Olsen, definitely in WandaVision, Tom Hiddleston in Loki. They're fantastic actors, of course. But this performance by Isaac was just wonderful, and I want to shift to that a little bit and just talk about the acting here. We had Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, May Calloway. What are your thoughts on kind of this ensemble cast that we had? Let's start up with Sean here.
Oh, I'm going to just fawn over Ethan Hawke now for a little while. I mean, I'll talk Oscar Isaac in a second, which I believe, top 5 Oscar Isaac performance, or excuse me, Marvel performance, but also maybe Oscar Isaac performance, which is nuts to say, but it really was that good. And I mean, he sort of buried the lead on it, and he intentionally did that in his interview, saying he was taking that British accent seriously. When now we realize he kind of wasn't, and that was the point of the character. Is it was supposed to sound like Dick Van Dyke and chimney sweeping, but I really loved Oscar Isaac in that regard. Just like the switch, the emotion, he made all of those people. He had great chemistry with himself, which that's not a thing. Like that's not a thing you can do. Ethan Hawke. I mean, I love Ethan Hawke and everything he does. So already there's a bias coming at me here, but just he's just this great, delicious villain in this, where he just sort of sits down and he's calm for you. He is a really good cult leader, where he's just hey, let's talk about this. And Ethan Hawke always is this warm, inviting presence, but in this, all of a sudden he will turn, and he believed his own hypocrisy, which was a strong hypocrisy by the end, and you felt it. But he wanted to try to he really felt like he was doing good. And I mean, that's the ultimate, parable. It's a villain is the hero of his own story. And he truly felt that. And you at that very end, you almost ever so slightly kind of feel bad for him. Not really, because he is a horrible person, but ever so slightly there. But those two are just the absolute ones. I mean, I don't think May was given much. And even at the very end, when she was starting to be the avatar for a god, that was trying to be a part of the fun with everyone else. And I don't know if that she's hey, look, I can do it too. And it's I don't know. I think that was a little bit tricky, but I mean, she's still I'm hoping I want to see more of her. I think she's charming. This is the first time I think I've ever seen her in anything. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what she could do with that character.
Yeah. Austin, how about you?
I really like May in this series, but I'm completely with you, Sean. I feel like Layla was a character that they were trying to not shoehorn in at the end and allow her to be part of the fun, and she was awesome, but that character is one that didn't get the development that I felt made you feel that moment. And I know a lot of people are going to watch that and they're going to feel the fact oh my God, she's a superhero. And the Scarlet Scarab, there's so much they can do with her now, which is awesome. But the build up to that, I felt like she needed more, and I felt like her performance deserved and warranted more to that character. So let's hope the writing's a little bit stronger next time. But when you have an actor who can act with himself and make it one of the most convincing dynamics I have seen in any superhero project, that episode, Joe, I love you said it, episode 5, when they're on the boat and they're having these conversations, and clearly what happens with Steven, he starts turning into what he turns into, and you feel that pain in Mark. You feel just every ounce of sadness and anger and all of that escalate. And then when the episode's over, you're like, that's they're both Oscar Isaac. How did they do that? How did they make it feel that convincing and then look that convincing, man? The CGI in this, just the special effects in general. I had some issues in the first episode. I had some issues with, certain green screeny things and some big creatures and stuff like that. I do think it got better, but just focusing on putting two characters on screen at the same time and riffing and going off of each other and all that, it's one of the coolest things I've seen in a long, long time in a superhero project. But again, we come back to the same thing. And Hawke was amazing. Hawke was spectacular. But Oscar Isaac's performance carried this show. Absolutely carried it, dude. And next season, when we get next season, because I think it's coming, we could see Oscar Isaac with Oscar Isaac with Oscar Isaac. And that's my brain, my heart, and my brain. I can't wait for that, man.
Yeah, my head to see Lockley. Yeah, because we only saw his glance.
Yeah, just a little bit,
And such a different dynamic with Lockley too. So such a rough character. And obviously, are we assuming that's who was in the third sarcophagus in the 5th episode or the end of the 4th? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
So I agree with everything that you both said. I would like to see more development of the other characters. I think we got a lot of Oscar, obviously. And that, to me, going back to what I said earlier, is what makes this series so different for me. I've never felt so in touch with the character and all of their personalities in a series. Let alone a movie. I mean, I think we have our connection to certain characters and we like them and whatever, but this was written so well to incrementally step up the empathy that you feel for each of these or for each of his personalities, or each characters, I should say. It's kind of weird to talk about personas. Until we get to probably the 5th episode and then leading into the 6th. I was blown away by that. And I can't say enough good things about how Oscar Isaac really stood out here and will continue to stand out as one of the top performances in the MCU. Ethan Hawke, I wanted more from, I have to be honest. I like his understated villainry, if you will, because I do think that there is a terror in that. When you're not so over the top, it makes you a little bit unknown. And I think that's really a strong way to deliver a character such as this, who is really talking about the good and the evil in people and, judgment and all of that. Did feel a little Thanos-y in a lot of ways. But I mean, I guess how many different directions can a villain go in, right? It's whatever. But yeah, I want to see more from him. Unfortunately, we might not, but it is Marvel, it is Marvel, so who knows? Let's talk a little bit about what was mentioned with Lockley coming in at the end. I have to be honest that seemed a little bit late for me. We get hints of it, I think, all the way back to episode 2, and if you know the story, you know that you're looking for it. But Austin, did you think that was a weird way to introduce this character in the after credits scene? Or are you fine with how they did it and excited to see what comes in the future?
I had 2 separate people reach out to me and say, what was up with the end of Moon Knight? And to both people, I said, did you watch the post-credit scene? And they said no. So if that's the case for 2 people that I know that asked me that question, imagine how many people didn't watch the post-credit scene and were told to on the internet that's not good. Now, it's fine if it's just a little, I don't want to spoil Doctor Strange, but if it's just something like that second post-credit scene, that's fine if people miss it. But with the reveal of Jake Lockley, not only that, you killed off the villain of the season in the post-credit scene.
Pretty big deal.
I'm like, what are you doing? And again, it's Marvel. We should know to watch the post-credit scene, this and that. But that's us talking. That's us that are in the know, in the zone. And even casual or even hardcore MCU moviegoers, they're probably watching the TV shows, not thinking that. They're just thinking, oh, the series is over. Let's turn it off. Let's go eat some lunch or something. Let's not watch the rest of what is, I think, the definitive ending of season 1. So I thought that was a terrible decision. And I didn't at first. I was like, oh, it's a cool post-credit scene, isn't that? But then I got those questions and I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's maybe the most integral moment of that episode. Yeah. And you put it in the post-credit scene. It's a cool ending. It's a really good ending. And I love the tease, but I thought the placement of it and to say it should have come earlier, I 100% agree. I think it should have come earlier. And I thought that was a terrible decision on their part to do that.
And when I say earlier, Sean, I even mean, 20 minutes prior when he has that little blackout, right? Wake up from that blackout when he killed everyone and step up and be like, oh my God, now I'm Jake Lockley. What the hell? Mm-hmm. That would have been I would have enjoyed that. It was just such an odd placement. It felt like almost an afterthought. Sean, what do you think about all this?
I mean, I still understood this as a limited series, like I said before. So when I saw the Lockley thing, I was like, dude, this seems like the beginning of it. Now that I know that there might be a season 2, I'm like, okay, cool. But the season 2 is going to be tricky because Oscar Isaac said, if it's good, I'll do it. So it's like, he's not signed on, which, I mean, you can't really do it without him. But this really does remind me of what happened with the Book of Boba Fett, where there are some extremely ridiculously crucial Mandalorian story points, and someone like my wife who gave up on Boba Fett after an episode, but loves Mandalorian, is going to come into season 3 of Mandalorian a tad bit confused unless they just play those eps again, which might be the move. I honestly, it just seems a little bit crazy to have like these crucial plot points, after the after credits, because normally it's just to, like, yes, introduce a character, but introduce a character as like a quick thing of like, hey, I almost said Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel's gonna be like coming up next and stuff like that. It's like you don't need to see that. You don't need to see that at the end of Infinity War, because you're gonna see the Captain Marvel stuff anyway. So you'll be good. But that's just like part of what I have issues with, I guess.
Speaking of Boba Fett, where we had half the season devoted to the Mandalorian, this is one series that we didn't have any crossovers or cameos in, and there were rumors of connections that were going to be made. One of which was having Eternals looped in at the beginning during a flashback of the gods fighting, and then other thoughts about how potentially Moon Knight could interact with other characters from the overall MCU. Notably, this was the series. The location was moved from New York to Chicago to try to get us away from New York being the epicenter of absolutely everything in the MCU. They've been through enough. But I guess, Sean, did that help this series? Does it hurt the series for the overall Marvel viewer? I'm trying to think, like, if I'm the one that's like Marvel through and through, maybe I really like this because I know Moon Knight and it's giving it its own due. But if I'm the casual Marvel viewer, then I don't know what I'm really watching.
I mean, it gets tricky because there's definitely like the Marvel audience has become two factions. And these two factions are, we want to see every character in every show and movie possible. How dare you not put them all in there? And then the other people that like are a little bit like me is where I'm getting sick of the crossover a little bit. I understand that's what the Marvel movies are all about and the Marvel properties are all about, but this was like very refreshing to see. And especially now I'm talking about it after seeing, Doctor Strange, where there was like 4 or 5 fingers in Doctor Strange. Not that way, but it was like Sorry.
Hot dog fingers from Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes. Yeah.
But like that, and so there's people that are going to be upset no matter what, because there's going to be people that are upset that there's no like fun characters they recognize, and there will be other people that will be upset that there's like all these connections, and can we just have a separate story for once? I think when it comes to like something like Moon Knight, you really couldn't put other people in there right now. You needed to flesh this guy out, because it is a very complicated, between like his own things he has going on to the Egyptian god mythological war he's got going on. So there's just a lot of stuff that needs to be presented and laid out, which they did a good job, even though they rushed the actual superheroes at the end, which was, like we already said, unfortunate. But still, they did a good job laying everything else out, without bringing in some Eternals characters and everything like that. Then, I don't know, maybe when Eternals 2 comes down the pike, Moon Knight shows up for that. Or I think he's going to be a little bit better as like the fun little side character in certain things. Because now that we have him, we have the person that's there. It looks like it'll be a little bit better.
I feel like Eternals showing up in Moon Knight would have helped Eternals more than it helped Moon Knight.
For sure. Yeah.
Austin, your thoughts on that?
I love... I'm a big crossover guy, man. I love when the heroes get together, because when I grew up, man, I read the Avengers comics, and I was a big Justice League guy, and I'm like, let's put them all in the thing and just let them do the thing. You know what I mean? But
we just walked in on Kevin Feige's board meeting just now.
Come on, Kevin, just put them all in there, buddy. But here's the thing, though. Moon Knight is one of those characters that, like you said, Sean, he just has to have time. You've got to have time by yourself. And so I'm glad they didn't include the Eternals thing, to flesh out every little ounce, every little detail of that character before we even remotely know who he is. And even after season 1, we still don't know who he is. We still have questions. So, give me maybe a season or 2 more before we start connecting. Now, when we do start connecting Moon Knight, I don't think it's going to be more so with the grand MCU than it is this smaller group that they're going to eventually assemble. And I'm almost positive they're going to do this. It's the Midnight Suns, and I think that's the name of the group, where you have these more, these darker, these grittier, these more, grounded characters that fit together seamlessly with each other. But if you throw them on the big team, which they probably will eventually, then it's not as exciting when you're looking at them, the Punisher, Moon Knight, Blade, Ghost Rider. That's what I get excited about. But like you said, Sean, I don't need any of that right now. I just want Moon Knight. Give me a season or two more of Moon Knight, and then eventually you can start putting him in these other projects. But I like the fact that they're separating it. And look at what DC's doing, too. I mean, you have completely separate universes in Joker and the Batman, and I'm sure we'll get more things. And those movies have been more successful, for the most part, than the films in the DCEU. Yeah. So they're doing it in that way. And while Marvel will always be one big universe, and now Marvel, Sony, Fox, one big universe, multiple universes, it's still, you're going to have room to do these individual projects where you don't have to connect. And if they keep doing that, I'm going to be happy. And Moon Knight was one of the first great examples of just standalone by yourself building that character.
It's interesting with the Midnight Suns because Doctor Strange is also a regular component of that group. Yep. And it doesn't feel like they're going that direction with him, given the post-credit scene or the mid-credit scene of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This is a spoiler pod, so we're talking about Clea coming in there, Charlize Theron. But the other one, I'm wondering, as you were saying that, and we're talking about like the darker characters or the more mature characters is kind of how I would look at it. Wonder if Disney tries to loop Deadpool in there somehow. It's
very possible with that, the gritty, and he's funny, but you look at a team like the X-Force. The X-Force seems like that grounded Midnight Suns type team, and Deadpool is essential to X-Force. So why not do it with this group? I like that.
Yeah, just trying to figure out. I mean, I've been thinking about Deadpool for a while in terms of how Disney's going to allow him to play in the same, based off of the previous two movies, and I think that remains to be seen. Who knows?
Yeah,
who knows? So earlier I mentioned that it was kind of spoiled overseas that season 2 was coming out, and I just found the tweet here. It was Disney Plus Hotstar, so the combination of the two overseas is how Disney Plus is marketed. And they sent out a tweet that has since been deleted that said, "Can't decide what's harder, dealing with heat or waiting for the second season of Moon Knight."
Okay.
So it's probably an announcement that will come once Doctor Strange kind of has its time and is given its due. But we can't discuss Marvel without discussing theories, of course. And there is a theory here that has been making the rounds online related to one of the big bads that we're going to see soon. And that's Mephisto. No, I'm kidding. It's not Mephisto. It's Kang. So Kang, of course, we know we're getting down the road. We saw Jonathan Majors as a variant of Kang at the end of Loki. And he's supposed to be like the main big bad in Quantumania coming next year. But what this theory basically purports, and I should also mention that Kang is a descendant of Reed Richards in a weird way. Yeah. So there's like a lot going on, a lot of connections there. But long story short is in one of the timelines, because you know how Marvel Comics can be, he ends up basically in Egypt and renames himself Ramatut and takes over the kingdom of Egypt. Later, there are massive statues that are built in his honor, and they end up rejecting the old gods, which angers Khonshu. Khonshu, of course, the main god whose avatar is Mark Spector.
F. Murray Abraham.
So, and then this is funny too. Ramatut continued to rule Egypt, but his reign was cut short when the Fantastic Four arrived in the era, searching for herbs. that cured his blindness. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of
legalize it. Yeah.
Yeah. whole lot of things going on there. So how this connects is that the Ethan Hawke's character, his disciples, had a little figure on their jackets, and that figure has been linked to images of Ramatut from the comics. So people are wondering if that's a nod to Kang. Interestingly enough, this is one of the theories that I haven't seen producers or showrunners address yet, where they've talked about a lot of other stuff in the Moon Knight interviews, but they haven't really touched on this one. So I'm wondering, Sean, is this a connection that you think Marvel is playing at in a series like this before we get Kang down the road? Or is this just much ado about nothing and a little nod towards those who may be more in the know?
This is why people hate us. It's this kind of crap right here. I just want to watch a show, and now I have a headache. Oh my God.
So, yes.
Let me try to I mean, I won't lie. I want to like almost pull back on my like no cameos thing for Moon Knight, because it would have just been awesome to see Kang, and that would have been like a nice fit as Kang shows up again, just like we talked about, I think, in the Doctor Strange episode. It would be fun if like Kang just shows up in every little thing and like just grabs the glove and is like, I could do this myself, like like his little, or do his little like tap dance on a desk or something, like it just. I want like a little bit of that, just because then we finally are going to get, I'm begging for connections now all of a sudden, but like, because right now we're a little bit sporadic with the Marvel properties, but I do want like just one little thing being like, hey, this is going to deal with all these things too. And, but, and I think like if you have this theory, if you have this thing going on, like you're saying, as like it felt a little bit complicated of a theory, but that would have been a good way to just sort of like maybe enhance that a little bit more. And like, just like maybe like throw a little bit more for Kang. And because then like once this happens in Quantum Mania, like people aren't going to be as confused, because I mean, he was straight up in that last episode of Loki, and that really did work. Or wait, that wasn't technically him, or I'm not doing this once again. This is again.
I'm kind of running in my head a little bit now, because now that we mentioned Quantumania and we're talking about Kang and the Reed Richards connection, because one of the other rumors that's out there about Quantumania is that with the rumors that Fantastic Four is going to take place in the 60s, they got trapped in the quantum realm, and this is what will release them. And if Kang's going to be the big bad, I wonder if that's then how Kang sort of enters into our world. I need to take a nap because of that, string of connections there.
So I just need to like make sure this. So you're saying that the Fantastic Four from the 60s are going to come into the modern world?
That's part of the rumor out there.
Then they'll just be like, they'll come out of they'll be like, an iPod? What's that? Zippity arm stretch. Like, I'm not doing this.
It's also connected to Austin Powers 4, who is now part of.
Oh, behave, baby. Yeah. Yeah, baby.
But Austin, do you think there's something to this theory with Kang there? Are they laying the breadcrumbs? Because Sean, you mentioned this on our last podcast. When Thanos was going to be the big bad, we saw Thanos a lot. We had connections to Thanos in all of the projects that led up to the first major encounter with Thanos. We don't have that yet with Kang, aside from his variant in Loki. But your thoughts, Austin?
Here's the funny thing. I don't think they know. because you go back and who knows, maybe they knew in phase one. They would lay all these little Easter eggs, but at the time they were probably just there for the sake of, oh, this is a cool Easter egg. And then 5 years later, Kevin Feige's like, they put that thing there, like that. Who's that little kid next to? Is that Tom Holland? Is that Peter Parker, the one that goes pew with the thingy? Okay, let's make it Peter Parker. So I feel like that's what they're doing here. They're putting all these little things in here, and they're like, eventually we'll tie it together. We'll come back to it when we get to it, that kind of thing. So I don't think they know. I think they are there because they understood the comics. That much I got, right? They make changes in this show. Like in the comic books, Jake Lockley is not the rich one. The rich one is Steven. So it's like they're going to make their changes. They're going to do their things. But they know what the core of this character is. And they know how all of these things tie in together. And they're probably like, yeah, we're going to get Kang. So let's just do that little thing right there. And that's what I feel like they're doing. Now, could this tie in? Absolutely. Could Kang be a big part of what you just described as that's how he's built up in the comics? Sure. But even then, like, that's cool. But I'm thinking like X-Men Apocalypse, they kind of did that with Apocalypse, and that was Oscar Isaac. So that's a little too. So part of me is like, it'd be cool if they do it. But then another part of me is like, I just maybe just keep them with the Ant-Man. But you said the quantum realm in the Fantastic Four. That was my theory too, because the Fantastic Four in the comics, they have the negative zone, and they go into the negative zone to explore and just make the negative zone the quantum realm and have that exact thing happen in the 60s and have them come to the future. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do in that movie.
Are you saying that Kang is the ultimate? We'll circle back to that villain.
Oh yeah,
we're going to circle back to that.
We'll just get back to that. I mean, Loki and Ant-Man, and he'll be here. So let's just throw it in there and see what happens.
That's what you want to do with $1 billion franchise.
Just wing it.
Just wing it.
You mentioned Apocalypse, and I want to also mention that there's a link to Kang with Apocalypse in the sense that when he was in Egypt as Ramatet, let me see, landed on Earth 616, circa the year 2960 BC. And this is from Screen Rant. After being nursed back to health as he was left blind and severely injured, he fled into the desert and left behind devices that held information about the world's first mutant, En Sabah who would become Apocalypse.
Wow.
So it's wild to me how these comics are so intertwined. But
That's crazy.
I also want to know how many theories the big heads at Marvel see online, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's good. Like we should adapt that."
Well, and I won't dive too deep because this isn't a Doctor Strange. One of the casting decisions was based off of the fan. It had to be based off of what fans wanted, and I think it's a great example of like, the fans are fan casting this person as this character. If we haven't already come up with let's just see what happens with that. And so that to me is evident. Like Kevin Feige's looking, he's got a burner account somewhere. And he's replying to tweets. He's like, I don't have a sniper rifle. That's not Kevin Feige. He's replying to tweets somewhere, whether it be memes about him or theories, and they're looking, right?
Yeah.
So they're probably going to see these types of connections you're saying right here. And they're going to say, well, that would be cool. Moon Knight season 3. Let's see what happens.
Jump into season 3 already. This is gonna go on for 10 years. So we talked a lot about Moon Knight and kind of where we're at with it, and where we think it's going in terms of the introduction to Jake Lockley and some of the threads that they can follow up on. I want to talk about the overall MCU shows as we're nearing the end of our time here, and we now have 6 of them. We have WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, and Moon Knight. And I'm interested in sort of your rankings of these 6 shows. So Austin, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah.
Where do you land with your shows starting from number 6?
Yeah, so I'm going to put What If at the bottom of my list, and it's not that I didn't absolutely love a few episodes of What If, because I did, but then there were other episodes that I just didn't care as much about, so it was very inconsistent for me. Even though the highs are really high, maybe the lows were a bit too low for me. So the inconsistency puts it at the bottom for me. So that's my number 6. My number 5 is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was my most anticipated Marvel show. I was so excited for it. And I loved the stuff that they did with the new Captain America and that entire side. And obviously what they did with Falcon and Bucky, those 2 characters, I thought that was great, right? Very personal, a great story. It ties into so much. And then we look at the grand scheme of things and what's going on right now. Like, I really liked the themes there. But the villains in Falcon and the Flag Smashers, I can't believe I remember what they were called. The Flag Smashers and that final battle, and everything that was very evidently impacted by COVID. And I go back to that rumor that there was a pandemic-related storyline there that Marvel cut out entirely. I think that's legit, because to me, there's clearly things missing. That side of the story I was so disappointed with. So unfortunately, that lands a bit lower than maybe I wanted. At number 4, I'm going Hawkeye. I really enjoyed Hawkeye. I thought it was a lot of fun. They rushed some things with finale. There were a few elements with, additions there that I wasn't too thrilled with, but it had a nice tone. It stuck to that tone. I really enjoyed the characters, and I like the emotions that come from Clint Barton. And obviously, Kate Bishop is awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
Fantastic. And adding in Florence Pugh was a nice treat. 3 is where I throw in Moon Knight. 3, I really enjoyed so many things about this show. And I have my qualms. I have my issues with the finale, and there were some confusing elements. And even like what you said, Joe, with the first 3 episodes, I wasn't all there. And I was like, the flick pick, I was talking to John, and he's like, I fell off of Moon Knight because I got to episode 3, and I'm like, I just can't. And I'm like, just wait until episode 4, and then wait until episode 5. And I think you may get on board after that. So the fact that that's the case puts it a little bit lower. But again, I still enjoyed it. 2 and 1 is actually really tough for me. But I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to put WandaVision at 2.
Wow.
And Loki at 1. So WandaVision for me was so consistent throughout. It was a great show, week to week theory, speculation, even though I think that ruined it for some people. Didn't for me, but I was really enjoying the artistic take on 2 characters that are beloved from the comics, but a spin with the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s episode per episode. That's just, I mean, it's incredible that Marvel even did that. And I think that got us kind of mentally prepped for what Sam Raimi did stylistically with Doctor Strange, two very stylistic TV show movie products in the MCU in Phase 4. But my number one is Loki. Only one really dull episode for me. And I think, what was that, 3, 4? 3? Yeah. 3 was, bleh, throw it out. But everything else, I loved. I love weird, quirky Twilight Zone type things. That's what I gravitate towards. And this show was weird. It was quirky, man. It was very quirky. But I love that. And I love how it takes Loki to a whole new level in terms of his character, the dynamics with other characters, and that moment when he's sitting there watching himself die and going through 2012 and all the way up until when he dies in Infinity War. I'm like, this show is going to do something for me that I didn't think it would do. And it's going to make me look at Loki in a whole new way, even past Infinity War, and say, he's one of the best characters in the MCU. And Loki did that for me. But not only that, you have a great finale, I thought, between he and Sylvie, and setting up the future. I mean, this is it, right? We're going to come back to Loki and say that set up the future of the MCU by introducing Kang in a way to where they built up to him in that final episode, and we got a good payoff. So other than that one dull episode, I'm going to put Loki slightly above WandaVision, but those two for me are like the tip top.
You just said it, Austin, with how they handled Loki and how they made you look at him and appreciate him in a different light. I think that's what all these series have done with the characters that they've brought in from the films, is giving them a little bit more time to be fleshed out and for us to spend time with them. Wanda's the other one that comes to mind right away. I really appreciate that and really enjoy it. And actually, Hawkeye is the other one. They really made me care about him when he was always the throwaway character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sean, I am so excited for this.
It's actually very similar to Austin's, so I'll go pretty quick. I thought for me, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was my bottom one, because basically the same thing for What If that you said was the highs were great. It was an 80s buddy cop, like 80s buddy action movie. Like it was and then like the lows were just so unbelievably low. If you have a scene with an argument with a senator, the way that one was constructed, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like it was just like, no, you don't understand, was said 12 times, and I can't. It made me sick. The next one up is What If, and What If did have that problem where low is high highs. I like the way that ended, where it was just like, oh, this is just an anthology series. No, it's not. They're putting everything together, which I thought was a really, really cool move. Hawkeye at 4. Like it's fun cotton candy, a little bit too silly, a little bit too many of those characters. That was the problem I have. It's like I wanted Vincent D'Onofrio until I realized I probably didn't want him in there. That was like my big issue. Moon Knight at 3, really great, few flaws, but really great. And then the same problem with me is the Loki and WandaVision, kind of like the top things. I will say, like, the main criticism with WandaVision is probably the dumbest criticism, or if this is the criticism people have. They said, well, it was really cool concept at first, but then it kind of became a Marvel show. And I'm like, oh, well, guess what it was? It's a Marvel show.
Surprise.
Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? But I still love that one quite a bit. But Loki was the absolute top. But I will go against your Loki. I thought that episode 3 was absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
for its courageous move. It was like a Richard Linklater Before Sunset kind of move, and I just there were so many people that hated it, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I love the crazy insight they're bringing into this, where there is very little action. They're literally on a train talking, and I love it.
I remember you raving about it.
yeah.
Now that you say that. A little different. What If is my last. I actually really enjoy What If. I rewatched some episodes leading up to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and realized I liked it a lot more than I thought I did. It's a nice diversion from what we usually get with Marvel, and I'm excited to see where they take it in the future. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for all the reasons that were said already. I did enjoy a lot of it. I thought that the stakes just didn't seem too high to me, and I was bothered by that. But it did introduce really neat concepts, like with the was it repatriation?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. When they were talking about basically how we take people that were blipped and put them back into the world. I think that's a really fascinating concept and maybe a little too heady for comic books, but something that's fascinating to think about. At 4, I put Moon Knight. I really like Moon Knight. Don't get me wrong. And I'm going to like all these. I really like Moon Knight, but I wanted more from the series, but I'm excited to see where they take the character. Number 3 is Loki.
He's going for it.
Really enjoyed Loki. Had a lot of fun with it. Thought it was great in a lot of ways, and really, I think the visuals in that series were just stunning.
Yes.
And I just always liked that character. I love the sarcastic side of Marvel there. Number 2 for me is Hawkeye. Hawkeye was a series that I knew going into it. I was like, I don't know if I even care about this. And I ended up actually really loving it because it was fun. It was, Kate Bishop, and listen, Florence Pugh, just throw her in there when she goes, Kate Bishop, hi, like, or whatever. That was the funniest thing in the world. And it lives in my mind rent free. And then WandaVision started it all off, and they started off with a really strong one. That was just such a unique concept. And it really started to give us Elizabeth Olsen owning the character, taking the character through her emotions, and building up to what we just saw in theaters in the past week. Just a really solid series through and through. And hey, got us going with all the theories too. There's still so many theories left out there that hopefully we'll see come to fruition in the future. Wild. Well, listen, we are done with Moon Knight, but we, in typical Marvel fashion, we are ready to dive back into another series on June 8th. The trailer came out for Miss Marvel. And before we go, I just want to ask your thoughts on your excitement level for Miss Marvel and what you're looking forward to there. Sean, Miss Marvel, what are you thinking?
I am thinking about how I can quickly look up the name of the actress that I think is... All right, here we go.
Jersey native, Iman Vilani.
Iman Vilani is amazing in this trailer. Like, just absolutely amazing. Like, just charismatic, fun. Like, this is how you lead a Marvel series. Like, the spunky, goofy, joke telling right away. Joke. And I think that's going to be the key to this one. That's what I'm going to be looking out for. This is Miss Marvel eventually going to join the Marvels, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so, is Bree showing up to this? Is it not going to be that? That's where,
don't start.
Why not? Like, that's pretty legit. That's not like the giant Kang theory where he was in cement and it's like, hey, it's Kang, like, or whatever that was.
He's our resident comic book guy here, Austin.
Even when you tell me a theory, I instantly forget it. Instantly.
Austin, Miss Marvel.
She's amazing. I keep seeing these like behind the scenes things and interviews with her, and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to meet her and talk to her. She's spectacular. What I love about what this show could do, we don't know, but it reminds me of have you guys watched the Netflix show Never Have I Ever? Have you watched that? Like that tone of just like coming of age, finding yourself, and obviously this has that superhero take and the superhero spin to it, but that is so distinctly, and we got it a little bit with Spider-Man Homecoming, but in TV series form and with her liveliness and just spunk and personality that I think she's going to bring to this character, this could be one of the more charming MCU entries we've seen. And part of me is like, similar to Moon Knight, I'm like, we know Captain Marvel's going to come in eventually. Like, we just know. But I want this to be its own little thing. I want her to make friendships and have romances and like all these wonderful things where you're just locked into her and you're with her the entire time. So this could either be just an okay Marvel show or super charming, super lighthearted, and just wonderful. And a lot of it has to do with her.
It's giving me Hawkeye vibes, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's giving me Hawkeye vibes. I'm excited for the representation. And I'm also sold because they used blinding lights in the trailer, and that was a marvelous move. Get it? No pun intended. No pun intended. Austin, very thankful that you were able to join us today to talk all things Moon Knight. Please let people know where to find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me YouTube, Austin Burke. I'm talking everything all the time with the theories and the comic books, and I do Letterboxd, Twitter at the Burkenator, Instagram at the Burkenator, and I made a TikTok. Austin Loves Movies, and I'm still trying to figure out how it works, but it's fun. So there you go.
Everyone always ends with TikTok, and I have a TikTok. I made a TikTok.
I'm sorry. I made a TikTok.
Trying, you know, be cool like the kids, trying to be hip, you know.
Well, listen, once again, you're always welcome back. Always a great time to chat with you. And for everyone that I almost said paid, for everyone that paid attention, for everyone that tuned in today, we hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we will talk to you all soon. As always, thanks for listening. You can follow both Joe and Sean on Instagram at Guy at the Movies and Math Teacher Movies. New episodes of the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean are available every Wednesday morning, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be on the lookout for special spoiler pods, where we dive deep into the latest film releases. If you like what you hear, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.